what I'm going to do in the remainder of time we have here is just go over terms, right? So I want to talk about democracy and what that means, and then we'll talk about erosion as we move on, okay? So it is almost without exception, there are few people who think democracy is a bad thing now, right? But it's not at all clear that everyone has the same understanding of what that term means. So it's the People's Democratic Republic of North Korea. That is not what most people would understand as democratic. The East Germany was called the DDR, the German Democratic Republic. Again, not what most people would understand as democratic. So it's not like straightforward. It's not obvious what that means. It may be for you all as Americans, but that's one way of understanding the term. All right, so I want to just start by, I don't know which one I should use here. I just want to lay out what are some, if I write over here, can you guys see? You can't see. Let me try, I don't want to write on that scares me. Let's do this, all right? Everybody can see here, right? Yes? Yes? Okay. All right, just give me some features of a democracy. When you hear the term, what does that mean to you? Yes?
Voting.
Okay. And what is it about the votes that makes it democratic?
You're voting for your leaders.
And who wins? No, but who wins when a vote
Whoever gets the most.
gets the most? So it's majority rule, right? Okay. What else do we have to assume, or what else do we need to have with respect to voting to make it democratic?
Free and fair election.
Free and fair, right. All right, so what does that mean exactly?
That you can vote for whomever you want without, anyone knowing who you're voting
Okay.
for, without the leaders knowing who you're voting for, without it being like rigged or fixed.
Right. Okay. So Putin in Russia just got reelected with 90% of the vote, right? It's and to be honest with you, every indication is that he does have majority support, but it ain't 90%, right? So, how we get from here to here is not obvious, and that's why they send representatives around the country to fledgling democracies to make sure that's true. So free means not just that you can vote for whoever you want, but also that you can run for any office you want, as long as you meet the criteria, right? So it's not simply a matter of you as a voter, but you as a citizen also have the freedom to run for office, right? And fair just means right. It's just it's not preordained. So one of the arguments about gerrymandering, which is the way we draw the districts in states, is that it is not fair because it is preordained, right? You have 90% Republicans or 90% Democrats. Let's say we're talking about some, trying to remember what the number is, it doesn't matter. A district in downtown Philadelphia, right? They're saying, well, that's not fair. If I'm a Republican, that's not fair. But anyway, I don't want to get into the whole thing. But the idea, this fair is not altogether straightforward, right? It's not obvious that you have it. It's more a question of more or less. Anyway, all right, what else?
There's the multiple parties.
And multiple means more than one, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you have one party and there's a vote, right? I mean, is it a democracy? I mean, anyway, all right, what else? What else is, how are laws made? How do courts operate? Yes?
Consider some form of public infrastructure in place.
What does that mean?
Like we all kind of have like a welfare in the form of like roads, voting infrastructure,
Oh,
like cities.
well, but most cities, well, most governments would have that, right? I mean, Roman Empire had really good sewers, right?
Yeah, I guess more so in the form of like voting infrastructure.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, look, I mean, there's a lot of procedures and structures that we can talk about, right? Usually there's a separation of powers, right? So you don't just have everything in the hands of one body even, right? Let alone one person. You don't, you have limits on power. So whatever the ruling body is, they can't just decide anything. Democracies usually have a segment of society that's understood to be outside the control of government. So the family, civil society, right? Little institutions, groups that can do whatever they want, right? Which gets me to my other point. These are features in the sense of, yep, got that, yep, got that, yep. What are the ideals, the values, the goals, the understandings that make this legitimate, make this the necessary outgrowth of those values, right? Why do we want to have majority rule? I mean, why? Why is that better? I mean, a Democrat will give you an answer to that. Small d Democrat, obviously, right? What is it? Huh? But why? Why? What do we? Who? You've all heard of the Declaration of Independence, right? What is in there? What are the truths that we hold? Right. And the idea is that these three things, now this is just the American understanding, right? There's different ones, but these three things are what? That's a really lame way to ask that question. Hold on one second. Happiness. All right. The first part of that, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And this is how they're equal. They are equal only insofar as everybody has a right to this, this, and this. And so, in that sense, and really in that sense alone, all human beings are the same. And so that is why you have majority rule. Because we're all the same insofar as we all have rights to this. And therefore, it is illegitimate, it is immoral for us to set up a government in which one person's vote counts more than somebody else's. Right? So you poli-sci people are used to thinking in terms of structures. You're used to thinking of procedures. But they didn't fall out of the sky. The morality, the values, the ideals came first. And this is why we are going to break from Great Britain. And this is why we're going to set up our own government. And this is why it's going to have majority rule, checks and balances. And, most relevantly, a Bill of Rights. Right? Okay, so Bill of Rights, it doesn't mean you have a right to everything. There's nothing in there about a right to food or shelter or medical care, right? They're civil rights. You have a right to say whatever you think about politics. You have a right to worship God however you want or not. You have a right to assembly. All right, so we got assembly, speech, press, religion, and grievance, right to grievance. So that's the one that everybody always forgets, right? But that's in the First Amendment too. And what that means is you have the right to tell government they're doing a crappy job. Or, hey, this pothole has been here for 6 weeks, right? So that is a right too. And all of those rights come from this notion of radical equality. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because it is not, you can't talk about this stuff, voting, without understanding that this stuff is implicated. And so if things are changed with respect to how the society is organized, the procedures, the institutions, it is going to necessarily implicate questions about how we understand human beings, what we value the most, and what we take to be most important in terms of our society. Is that clear? I just want to, I just want to show you that you can't separate these. Okay? All right. Okay. So, bear with me here. I know you're going to just start rolling your eyes in a minute, but I wanted to spend a minute here talking about the etymology here. So, anybody can tell me democracy, where it comes from, what it means? What are the roots of that word? That's why I said you have to bear with me. All right, so I'm just going to geek out a minute. I'm not going to write it out in Greek because I think I'd probably screw it up. But demos and kratos. All right, demos means people, but not exactly. I'll get to that. Kratos means rule, not really. It means power. There's another word that you will recognize too. This is Greek as well. So arche means like primary authority, right? It is more appropriately understood as rule. So when you say mono meaning one, arche, that means the rule of one. Oligos is rich. So oligarchy means rich come first. Anarchy, an means the opposite it's the opposite. So there is nobody in charge. That's what anarchy means. All right, so let me get back to the other root here. So kratos means, it doesn't mean so much rule, it means power. So the closest word that I know of is German is Kraft. Kraft means there's this, anyway. So it doesn't mean just rule. It's not a static word. It's a word of power. And demos means it means the people, but it means the people after you've taken out this group. Can you read that? Aristoi? You know what we get if we put that and kratos together, right? What do we get? Aristocracy, right? And so aristoi doesn't mean rich. Plutocracy, Plutos, means rich. Or oligos means rich. What does aristoi mean? Anybody know? It means excellence. So aristocracy is rule of the excellent. And so everyone through most of society has said, Well, yeah, we want the excellent people to rule, you know. But here's the point. When you take out the rich and you take out the excellent, that's who's left in demos. So who is that? We're taking out the rich and we're taking out the excellent. Who are the demos? Come on, it's not that hard. What's left?
Common people?
The common people, the regular folks, the hoi polloi, which is another Greek word. But anyway, the rabble, right? The folks who are just like, you know, Joe off the street. That's what demos is. So when you say demos kratos, you're saying power to the regular guy and gal. You're saying power to the people who are not highfalutin, can't make a lot of expectations about them in terms of education or culture or worldliness. That's what demos kratos means. That's the root of democracy. So I'm giving you a hint. This is Greek. What's the most famous ancient democracy? Come on, you guys got to know this. Parthenon. Right. What's the city-state? Athens. Right. Okay. So Athens was the world's first democracy. It had, philosophers, scientists, playwrights that we still read. It was probably about 3 million people. No, sorry. That's all Greece. It's like 300,000 people, and it was a span of about 150 years. And we still have scientists, philosophers, and artists that we still read 2,500 years later. It's just breathtaking how successful this culture was, right? And it was a democracy. So if you were a citizen, which meant you had Athenian background, if you were a man and you were not a slave, then you were part of the government. And all you had to do to be part of the government was just show up. Show up at the meeting in the Parthenon, and you would be part of the ruling class, ruling decision-making body. And what's more, the judges that were used in Athens were picked by lot. So if you were just somebody who wanted to be a judge, you would be, actually, I don't think you even had a choice. They would just take the people who were citizens and they'd pick out 7, and that was the judge. That was the judge and jury. So it was extremely democratic, right? It's more democratic than what we have now. So people see that form of government, and they see that kind of level of achievement, and they put them together, and they say, wow, this democracy thing is pretty great, right? Okay. So that's that's one part of it. So has anybody read anything about Socrates? Sound familiar to anybody? All right. Socrates is understood to be like the progenitor of all Western philosophy. He was the first person to say, I am wise because I know that I do not know. And so then went on and taught Plato, who was really the first one to systematically put all this down. None of that is relevant except that Athens killed him through democracy, through majority rule, through this jury that was selected by lot. Democracy said Socrates was endangering the youth and putting crazy ideas in their head, and they executed him. And so that made that is the one little thing that people always come up with when they say, yeah, democracy though. Because they'll say, all this stuff, all this great stuff happened, but they also killed one of the greatest thinkers in in the history of Western civilization. And they did it in ways that manifest the worst parts of democracy. So you have this regular people who have power, who are in charge, and they are called upon to decide about this person, Socrates. And they have somebody who's telling them, he is endangering your children. He is making things bad for you. He is a danger to our society, to our Athenian way of life. And I'm trying to see whether or not I can get you there, but I don't think I can, so I'm just going to tell you. So people hear that and they think, see, this is why democracy is not that great. Because the regular people are so unsophisticated that they're going to use their emotion. They're not going to think things through. They're going to be reactive. They're going to go too fast. They're going to be taken in by demagogues. And so democracy is inherently dangerous. And the death of Socrates is just the, exhibit A in that conversation. Anybody who's worried about democracy, who's worried about giving power to these people who aren't trained, aren't sophisticated, easily taken in, and who are reactive rather than thoughtful, are going to be worried about democracy and be thinking, going back to finding, and how do we get those excellent people to rule again? Okay, so that's Greece. We're actually making progress here. Now we're going to go to Rome. And there, the word is republic. So Rome was a republic for about, 300 years. But the word here is very, it's very straightforward. Res publica doesn't mean anything more than the public thing. That's all res means. And so, you want to hear something really interesting. Publica has the same root as puberty. So the idea was that once you hit puberty, you were a full citizen, and therefore you were part of the res publica. All right, so anybody have any sense, want to throw something out about what the difference is between a democracy and a republic? Yeah, give it a shot.
Democracy is direct rule by the people, where a republic is indirect.
That's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it. So a republic is not going to have direct democracy. There was not any kind of form where everybody could just kind of go and vote, right? You had the Senate, and the Senate was a free body and had control, but it was all the wealthy, property owning families that were well established, and that's how they kind of got into it. And and then the question of elections is a very problematic one. I'm not even going to go there. So anyway, so the question that, if you haven't heard this yet, I imagine it'll come up in this election. Are they the same? Is a republic a democracy? Or are they different? And when we say to the republic for which it stands, are we saying that we're not a democracy? Or are we saying I don't know, what? I mean, have you heard this argument before? Does it sound familiar to you? All right, can you just like say how you've heard it?
I mean, I guess there's been people that say that the United States is not a democracy,
Right.
and that we're instead like a constitutional republic.
Mm-hmm. And so if there's a difference, could you articulate what they would say is the difference?
So what someone arguing that it's a constitutional democracy says the difference is that the United States is not solely governed by just the people, but we also have, you know, a written law that is the law of the land that the people cannot oversee.
Right. Okay. That's right, and that's pretty. That's basically the argument. The argument is that you know, democracy is when two wolves and a sheep take a vote about what's for dinner, and it's just majority rule. And a republic sets up procedures of law and of rights that make sure that that kind of vote doesn't happen. That's the argument. All right, let me just put it this way. When we're talking about sovereignty, right? When we're talking about what the difference is between a monarchy and an aristocracy and a democracy, what are we talking about? We're talking about who rules, right? That's the point. That's the distinction. Is it the rich? Is it the king or queen? Is it the excellent, or is it the people? Is there a way in which the people do not rule in a republic, in our republic? Is there anybody else you can point to and say they're really sovereign? They're really the ones who are in charge. Well, yeah, there's some to the people, but really, this group is in charge. Yeah?
We can argue like voter suppression kind of like plays into that a little bit because if like certain groups are marginalized and unable to vote.
So that's true. And I mean, that's an argument that you hear. The other one you hear is that this is effectively an oligarchy because the rich have so much more power than the people. But I'm going to walk you back to this one, right? So if you're saying a democracy is, we're not a democracy because we have rules of laws and we have rights. If it's a democracy, it has these things. Because there's no reason to have these things. There's no justification for these things without a belief in these things. And so if you're going to have voting and you're going to have free and fair elections, you also, for those same reasons, have to have a commitment to rights. So if you're arguing that a democracy is where two wolves and a sheep decide on what's for dinner, that's not democracy because that's not treating everyone with the same set of rights. So keep this in mind. Wait a minute, am I hearing that this is not a democracy because it's a republic, and are they trying to push this as something other than a democracy? Is it a way of disparaging democracy, talking down democracy, and putting something else up as more valuable or better? And so anyway, I just want you to kind of hear, A, where those things come from, and then B, how they're different, or the argument around whether they're different or the same. So the Roman Republic was also the Roman Empire, right? And they went out throughout Europe and Middle East and Africa and basically destroyed anything in their path, the Roman army. And they brought back, and they were going on these tours. They went to England, right? They went to Denmark. They went to Syria, right? I mean, literally the entire known world was under the Roman control. And they took all these incredible riches back to Rome, and all the soldiers that were gone came back to these farms that were derelict because they weren't around to farm them. And often those farms were taken over by the wealthy families who didn't send anybody off to the soldier. And so they came back, and there was extreme increase in inequality between the classes. The rich got really rich and the poor got poorer. And those poor people were often soldiers who brought that wealth in the first place. So there was this overwhelming sense of outrage and unfairness among the part of the poor people in the Roman Republic. That's not what's important. What's important is everybody in the Roman Republic in the Roman Senate knew this was true, but they were simply incapable of doing anything meaningful about it because they were also self-interested in maintaining the status quo, and they were just they could not agree on what the strategy was for giving wealth back or for sharing or whatever. So nothing happened. And so as a result, demagogues arose within the Roman Republic and said, you guys are getting screwed. I'm going to help you. We're going to lead a fight. You ever heard of the movie Spartacus with Kirk Douglas? That was one of the most, I mean, that's true. There really was a guy named Spartacus. He really did lead a slave revolt, and he was really powerful because he took all these people who were trained as soldiers, right? And well, that's not good. All right, anyway. And so the point is that democracy not only failed, right? The Roman Republic ended. Caesar crosses the Rubicon. Caesar gets killed. He's an empire. Anyway, it takes a long time, 200, 300 years for this to happen. But it ends up with the Roman Empire and the emperor. And the emperor is godlike, and he has to be worshipped. All right, it's a long way from the Senate. But the other point is that democracy, the republic, is understood to be hopelessly inefficient. You have this serious problem, right? This huge, unparalleled inequality and unrest on the part of the poor and the slaves and the farm people. And the Senate knows this is true and knows they have to do something, and they fail. So democracy gets this tag of not just being people who are the rabble, who are easily swayed and who are emotional, but it also gets the tag of being hopelessly inefficient. And when there's a crisis, democracy is the last form of government you need. Because if you have one person who just says, I know what to do, I'm going to come in, I'll solve this problem for you. Whether or not they do it correctly, the one thing you can say is they can do it fast. They can react. And the one thing you can say about democracy, about government, is it's slow. And when you get these people together with competing interests and competing egos, and they're more interested in how often they're on CNN than they are in solving problems, then democracy is left unable to address the problems that are so exigent and so dangerous for the society right now. So, I'm coming in for a landing here. The point is that from the very gate, from the very start, democracies had reasons why people were scared of them, why people did not want, who did not want them, because they didn't think it was going to work. And the American founding was full of people like that. John Adams, second president of the United States, during the Revolution said, there's not a democracy yet that hasn't committed suicide. And he was a supporter, right? So there is from the beginning, this sense that there's something dangerous, fragile about this. And in both of those ways. Both the people are too easily swayed and the government is too inefficient. Okay? All right, so I want to what time is it? All right. So, nah, I'm not even going to do that. I think I'm kind of done. In the founding, in the American founding, there was not one founder who wasn't aware of this history. And there wasn't one founder who wasn't scared of this history. And so everything they did was set up in order to make these things less likely to happen. And it was justified in the Federalist Papers and elsewhere in order to show, look, we know what went on there, and we're showing you why this isn't going to happen here. And so when you look at things like the Electoral College, and do you know what? The 17th Amendment set up the direct election of senators. Do you know what it was like before that? You know what the rule was before that? Yeah? State legislatures chose senators. And so when you hear somebody saying, well, this is more republic, ask them if they want to repeal the 17th Amendment. I bet you the answer is no. But in any case, so why did they do that? Why was there an electoral college? Why was there why did state legislatures elect senators? What was the purpose of that? Here's another one, and this is still true. The Senate has 6-year terms that are alternating. So even if you wanted, even when you said the Senate is completely corrupt, we got to get rid of it, you cannot get rid of more than a third at a swipe. Why is that? What is it that all those things do? Yeah?
Limit any one group's control and power and give it back to the people?
Yes. And they make it, they put brakes on the demos. They say, you got all the power, but we're not going to make it easy for you to react like that. We're going to make you have to work harder to make this work. We're going to make you work harder and work longer, right? If you want to replace the Senate, you could do it, but it's going to take you 6 years to do it. And maybe by that time you would have kind of throttled down and you won't be freaking out and you'll actually think about what you're doing. And even then, we're going to make it come through the state legislature. So, rabble, demos, if you want to do this, you can do this. You can put in your people to be state legislators. You could say, we want people who are going to kick out everybody in the Senate, and we're not going to vote for any state legislator who doesn't do that. Power still goes all the way to the people, ultimately. But all those institutions within the U.S. Constitution are there to serve as brakes on the demos. Okay? And so, I think that's enough. Here's what I want you, the reason I'm telling you this is because those two complaints about democracy are out there. They're part of what you are going to hear when anybody's talking about democratic erosion. And so the question is, so you need to be aware that this is a history that goes back to the very, very beginning. And then you need to be aware of how Democrats have been just as aware of these problems and have designed government in order to address them, to deal with them. All right? So, start with this, read the chapter, and then find me articles and get them to me by 8 a.m. on Monday or Tuesday the 21st, and I'll see you then. Okay? Any questions about anything? All right, so here's what I want you to do. Take your name tags and just put them on this table, and then we'll be good.